Welcome, 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 welcome. Please make yourselves at home. Great. Let me ask this question. Has anyone here built their own home? Raise your hand. Beautiful. So what was that process like for you, my friend?
It was educational.
Educational. Yeah, life is a learning experience.
Life was an expensive process. It took a little bit longer than expected, a little more complicated than expected, but I loved it. I could see it in every step of the process, and I studied a little bit about it. Actually, I went through it a couple of times, but remodeling it was building from scratch.
I got you. Do we have a microphone that we could pass out to people? Thanks. We don't have a microphone. Okay, so the gentleman said it was educational, expensive, long in his experience, but very, very satisfying. How about in the back here? What was that process like for you? No, lie to us, please.
It's a pain in the ass.
Okay, so it was a pain. The building a home for your business on Tableau Online is not going to be expensive. It will be a little educational, and it won't be a pain. Building a home for your business on Tableau Online is easy. It's the most cost-effective way to get self-service analytics into your organization. My name is Bill Madrano. I'm a product manager in global services here at Tableau. This is my 8th customer conference. I've seen just how transformative Tableau Online can be, how it can easily enable self-service analytics very, very effectively and quickly. I'm presenting today with my 2 friends and colleagues from Dev, Corey and Martin. Gentlemen, please.
Hi.
Whew. So that's his name.
Hello. All right. Well, the test checks didn't catch that. Hi, I'm Corey Shirishi. I like to enter with a bang. I'm in development. I've worked on the Tableau Online, and I'm currently working on a team that does onboarding experience. So.
And hi, my name is Martin Wolf. I don't have quite as many Tableau conferences as Bill with 8, but I do have 8 years of experience as a software engineer. And my current mission at Tableau is to improve the onboarding experience for new customers to Tableau Online and Tableau Server.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks a lot. So now you know a little bit about us. Let's learn a little bit about you. Please raise your hand if you're currently on Tableau Online. Yes, this is good. How many sites do you have? Okay, raise your hands with the number of fingers. I'm seeing a lot of ones, and 1 4. Very, very good. Who here is thinking about going to Tableau Online? Awesome. And who here is currently using Tableau Server? Beautiful, beautiful. A lot of what we're going to go through today is applicable to Tableau Server, as well as it is to Tableau Online. And my colleagues will point out where the differences are, when there's differences. So today's session is going to go through these 4 steps. We're going to talk about the planning, which, as you can ask our friends that have built their own homes, is super important, right? Next, we're actually going to talk about the structure and the building of that structure. Next up, we're going to talk about furnishing it. So this would be analogous to, in your own home, this would be analogous to adding furniture, adding appliances. In our case, it's going to be adding data and adding data visualizations. And then finally, it's going to be all about keeping it clean, right? The maintenance and the upkeep. So when we get to planning, let's think about what is the value of Tableau Online. The value, what we're going to do in this slide is go through these topics. Starting with the value of Tableau Online, we'll talk about how it is that we guide and direct our migration to Tableau Online. We'll talk about understanding the users. There's 2 categories of user communities. We'll do a deep dive into them. And then finally, we'll talk about the elements, the 3 elements of a successful onboarding strategy. What's the value of Tableau Online? In a word, self-service analytics. So if you're a server admin, you may be a little uncomfortable with the idea of self-service analytics. You may be concerned that it'll turn into the Wild West, that there'll be some kind of data anarchy out there. Well, rest assured that self-service analytics is great for your business. And the reason that it's good for your business, that it's great, is because of the reason that we built Tableau. We built Tableau because we believe in the natural, built-in, intrinsic creativity and curiosity of people. Once people can ask questions of their data, get answers that lead to more questions, more answers, ultimately yielding a better data-driven decision, the better your business is. The caveat here is let's build a structure that's effective in terms of managing the content and managing our user community. And we want to do that intentionally and from the beginning. It's also ridiculously easy to use. You can go through the mechanics of setting up your Tableau Online site in under 5 minutes. I know because I've done it. A bunch of us had a race to see how quickly we could do it. So getting Tableau Online working is really straightforward. It's not expensive, and it's not involved. It's not complicated. It really is very, very simple. Additionally, by getting on Tableau Online, you have removed the whole problem of the whole challenge of versioning. You don't have to worry about what version you're on. You don't have to worry about maintenance. You don't have to worry about patching. You don't have to hire server admins. Has anyone ever put in a reporting platform in which you had to hire server admins, buy new hardware in order to support it? I see you have, yep. It's pretty common. Well, in Tableau Online, you don't have that at all. Have you ever had a reporting platform that would report different numbers for the same metric? Right. Yes, I see you have too. Anybody over here? Okay, very good. So in Tableau Online, when we plan this effectively, we're going to set it up so there's a single source of truth, right? And there won't be, when you get different numbers for the same metric from different teams, that causes conference calls and emails and meetings about which is the real number, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So done correctly, we can nip that one right in the bud. And that would take care of the centralization and consolidation. So let's talk about how is it that we guide, direct, and manage our Tableau Online effort. The answer to that is a team. Our suggestion is that team be comprised of 3 representatives, or representatives from 3 areas. First would be the executive sponsor, because they have fiduciary responsibility to make sure that this Tableau Online effort succeeds. Next up is the business. At the end of the day, the business is going to be making decisions based on the data that they consume through visualizations that are served up from Tableau Online. And then, of course, there's IT, because IT is a trusted partner that typically is going to have responsibility, number 1 for security, number 2 for performance, 3 for governance, and 4 often will have responsibility for support, the supporting mechanism that we put in place to help our users grow inside Tableau Online. The most important artifact that we're going to get out of the steering committee, you can call this a center of excellence, you can call it a steering committee. The most important artifact is going to be precise measurable goals. These 2 precise measurable goals should support 2 initiatives. The first initiative is going to be user adoption, and the second is going to be usage. So these are the things that's going to drive value in your Tableau as a platform investment. People using it and people that are enabled. So let's talk a little bit about what the user communities look like. They're going to fall into two categories. First category is going to be your end users. The end users come in three flavors. First off is going to be decision makers. I was having a conversation with a gentleman from a real estate outfit in the Mid-Atlantic that currently that's who they've got on their first wave, is out there already are the folks that are going to be are making decisions based on the data that they see in Tableau Online. Hey, thank you. The decision makers have a succinct, clear data need. They need trustworthy, certifiable data sources, and they need clear, easily understood, intuitive dashboards, worksheets, and data stories. Typically, in your organization, decision makers are going to have viewer roles. If you're familiar with our old legacy viewer role inside Tableau Server, this is very different. Because viewers here can interact, they can filter, they can click around to different parts of a dashboard. So what they'll be doing, what your decision makers are typically going to be doing, is asking questions, getting answers from predefined content. Next up is the publishers. The publishers inside our community, inside your community, are folks that are creating content. Their data needs are, number one, they need access to development data sources, and they need access to sandboxes where they can put their ideas out there and begin to build them out. Typically, well, not typically, by every definition of the word, a publisher has to have a creator subscription role. And then third up are the analysts. In some organizations, they're in charge of converting thousands of spreadsheets over to data visualizations. Analysts are able, depending on their group permissions, something that we're going to get into in a minute, analysts are going to be creating, modifying existing visualizations, and they're also going to be, pending their permissions, creating new worksheets and workbooks off of existing data sources. So they have that same need for access to clear, intuitive visualizations, that same need for trustworthy, certified data sources. They are going to be explorer roles in our new subscription offerings. So that's one category of users. The second category of users are the administrative roles. Overarching, completely omnipotent over your entire site is the site admin. The site admin can do anything as relating to data sources. They can set up projects. They're the folks that are really setting the structure in your Tableau Online site. Next up is the project leader. The basic building block of content on Tableau Online is the project. Look at it like a container into which you can put data sources and you can put workbooks. The workbooks themselves are kind of containers, and these workbooks will contain worksheets, dashboards, data stories. The project leader is responsible for adminning, managing, and governing projects, these building blocks of your Tableau site. And next up is the data steward. The data steward has the same sort of responsibility, adminning, managing, and governing data sources. Additionally, the data steward's got to pay attention to a couple of things that are really important to adoption. First off is the data dictionary, data definitions. In other words, we've got data sources, but what does any given field mean? And this knowledge, this data dictionary, needs to be curated, and it needs to be available to all the users. Another thing that the data steward is responsible for, another notion, is data lineage. Where does the data come from? So you've got finance users, right? And they're looking at a dashboard about the general ledger. Well, where does that come from? What's the feeder system? How often does it get updated? Have there been any transformations on any fields? Are there any codes that need to be decoded? Things like that. This knowledge, the more of that knowledge you get out to your user community, the more successful your Tableau Online environment is going to be. So now that we've taken a look at who the user community is constituted by, let's take a look at the 3 elements. These are 3 simple things that should be guiding your onboarding strategy. First and foremost is provide a safe place for your user community to land. And that safe place is different for everyone because it depends on what their business function is. So we need a secure, relevant place for folks to land. We need to consider training your users. So you've got 2 choices when it comes to training. Number 1, we can do formal training provided by Tableau and our partners, or you can have online training. Inside this deck that's going to be available to you, there's a couple links out there to some videos that provide some training for the web authoring environment. There's also a link to the Tableau Online User's Manual. That should be included in your welcome email to everyone so that they have a means to self-serve in terms of education. And then third, we need to be out in front of the curve when it comes to supporting our user community. It doesn't have to be anything too fancy. It can run the gamut. For example, we could do it simply with an email distribution list whereby our more seasoned users help our less seasoned users, our newer users. They can share information. People really like to help. Additionally, you can do something a little fancier, like Tableau Doctor Hours, say every Wednesday from 2 to 5. You know, have a set place. It could be virtual, it could be physical, where people can come in. You can do lunch and learns, right? Where someone solves an interesting problem, someone puts out there a solution, have them talk about it, right? Or you could pick calculations, pick level of detail, pick table calcs, right? Pick data blending. You could have sessions just on that. And finally, you can have a blog or a newsletter that goes around. I'll give you an example, and this is included in the deck, of an email that covers those 3 elements. First off, it gives them links to the user's manual, gives them a couple of links to online training videos. Next up, give them a distribution list where they can ask questions. And then finally, we provide the address of your Tableau Online site. And when they click into that, once their permissions are configured the way we're about to show, they'll get right put into where their relevant secure content is. So we've taken a look at what's the value of Tableau Online? We've taken a look at how it is that we direct and we guide this effort. We've taken a look at what our user community looks like and what are the 3 elements for a successful onboarding strategy. To show you how easy this is, I'm going to introduce my colleague who is a new homeowner and a newly minted father.
Thank you, Bill. So now that we're done planning, it is time for the site admin to start setting up the site. And we want to do so in a way that allows for true self-service while complying with any and all governance rules that your business requires. Or, speaking with our house building metaphor, we want to build a flexible structure that fits our needs. We don't want to start remodeling just a few weeks after moving in. So let's start by talking about content. Naturally, we'll have one Tableau Online site here on top in which we'll have different projects to organize our content. And these projects typically align with the business organization. So within these projects, our recommendation is to have 3 sub-projects: development, QA, and production. Production contains the final workbooks to be viewed and consumed by your organization. Quality assurance is the place where these workbooks get reviewed before they get moved to production. And development is kind of the analyst playground where they can create new workbooks and iterate on them. The project leader, as introduced by Bill earlier, is responsible for the promotion process to move workbooks from development over QA to production. They are subject matter experts that are ultimately responsible for the content in these projects. The data stewards, on the other hand, are in charge of providing the data sources. So they are responsible for the freshness and the performance of the data. And the requirements may be different between development and QA and production. For example, in development, it may be sufficient to use a subset of the data or to use an extract instead of a live connection to reduce workload on the underlying data source. This separation of work between project leaders and data stewards means that the site admin doesn't actually need to intervene in any of these day-to-day operations. It is the site admin's responsibility, though, to ensure that all users have the appropriate permissions on each of these projects. For example, finance may have some sensitive content that should not get shared across organizations. Or an analyst may have the right to publish to development, but only the project leaders can move the workbooks to QA or to production. So let's talk now how we can efficiently manage permissions. First, we want to set permissions at project level and not at data source or workbook level. And we want to assign permissions to groups and not to individual users. The reason is that it's just much simpler to maintain. So if we have a look at these four user groups here in the center, IT dev viewers, explorers, creators, and project leaders, we see that they do not align with any business organization. We call them functional because they focus on what a user can do on a given project. In our specific example, these four groups drive the permissions on the IT dev project. With the IT dev project and its groups set up this way, giving users access to this project now becomes really easy. I just need to assign these users to the corresponding groups. For example, Sally from finance may need viewer permissions on the IT dev project, so I simply assign her to the IT dev viewers group. Gary and Ed may need explorer permissions, so I assign him to the explorer group. Okay, so now that I have theoretically covered how we want to manage content and drive permissions, let me show you how this actually looks like on a Tableau Online site. And I think our Chrome just crashed. So let me reopen it. And Corey gave me like the fancy command line tool that command line combination that I don't remember. Try restore.
Yeah, why not? Probably need to log in again.
There we are.
Nice. Cookies are great.
Thank you, Corey. OK, so here we're on our demo site. We're in the Contents tab. Yes. So we're in the Contents tab, where we can see the saved workbooks and data sources organized by projects. As this is a new site, we don't have any workbooks and data sources yet, but we can see that there are already 2 projects. The default project was automatically created by Tableau, and I have set up the IT project before today's demo. One important thing to know about the default project is that when creating any new top-level project at this level, it will inherit its permissions from the default project. So whenever you set up a new site, it's really important to first go into the default project and set the permissions before creating any other projects, instead of like needing to manually go into all these projects and change the permissions after the fact. But let's have a closer look at the IT project now, and more specifically, its subprojects. So here we find the 3 subprojects, IT Dev, IT Prod, and IT QA. And let's drill down even further, and let's have a look at the project permissions of the IT Dev project. So here we can find the 4 groups from the presentation earlier and their respective permissions. IT Dev creators can publish to this workbook, and they can edit and create workbooks and data sources. IT Dev explorers can view this project, and they can edit workbooks and connect to the underlying data sources. And project leaders have project leader permissions, and viewers can view this project, its workbooks, and connect to the underlying data sources. So this is a one-time setup that I only needed to do once when creating this project. And as mentioned earlier, giving users access to the IT Dev project now becomes a mere task of assigning them to the right groups. So let me do that right now, and switching over to the Users tab. So here I'm in the Users tab, and as you can see, I've already added some users to this site. And let me quickly talk about user management and authentication. By default, Tableau provides an authentication mechanism called Tableau ID, and Bill, Corey, and myself are authenticated that way. But if your company uses single sign-on, Tableau can connect to your identity provider using SAML. Or if you use Google authentication, then Tableau can integrate with that as well. And I think if you're interested in setting up SAML on your site, there is a specific session tomorrow that actually shows how to set up SAML on Okta. So there's a specific session to that. But let's get back to our initial objective. We want to give users permissions to specific projects. And if we remember back from our example, Sally here from finance needed viewer permissions to the IT Dev project. So let me just do that right now. I'll open the group membership tab, and I can just add her to the IT Dev viewers group. Please note that it's really important to give these groups self-explanatory names. In our example, I know exactly which project and which permissions this group controls, so that makes it really easy to give Sally the right permissions. I can save. So now Sally has access to the IT Dev project. Let's do one more. Can do Ed and Gary from our example. They needed Explorer permissions. So let me go up here to apply an action on both of them. Select group membership again. Oh, I still have Sally selected down here. Let me just unselect her. And I'm back at the group membership, and I'll just give her IT Dev Explorers, or give these two IT Dev Explorers group. And save. So as you can see, using these groups now makes it really easy to drive permissions. And the advantage is that for each user, I can see what permissions they have. Unlike if I gave them permissions at workbook or data source level, I have no way of knowing in a consolidated place which user permissions they have. But using this mechanism actually allows me to view that in this centralized place. OK, that's all what I wanted to show about setting up a site. Let me switch back to our presentation that I need to full screen again. So I have talked about how to set up an efficient project structure, how to drive permissions using functional user groups, and I've quickly touched base on user authentication. Now, let me hand it over to Corey to add some data and content.
Aha, no explosions this time. All right, thanks, Martin. So first, Bill laid out the plan for our Tableau Online site, and then Martin went and constructed the walls for us. And at this point, our house is completely empty. So now we're going to bring in the furniture, and we're going to make this a great place to live. So as we go, I want to note two things. First, how the walls that Martin built are setting us up for success in terms of permissions and making our lives easier. And then I also want to note how as we start to move stuff in, it's enabling self-service for more and more types of users. Specifically, I'm going to be showing 4 things: publishing a data source, certifying a data source, using dashboard starters to get content up on your site quickly, and then scheduling an extract refresh. So let's start the move in. All right, so we're currently in Tableau Prep. Since we're talking about Tableau Online, we're not going to go into a lot of details about how to use it, but we're just going to be saying this is data that I've already prepped. It's ready to be published to our site, and we're going to go ahead and do that. So I'll come to the end of our flow and add an output step. I'll select publish as a data source, and I've already signed into our site. So I'll select one of the projects that Martin set up for us, in this case, IT Dev, and then I'm going to give it a name. I want to point out that naming is really important for data sources, and it's good to have a naming convention for your organization. Some things that you might want to include would be aggregation levels, useful descriptions, something about the data lineage, like where it came from, or maybe like time period that it's related to. For the demo, we'll do something simple, like IT requests from CSV. And in the description, you can go into even more details, talk about how to use it, even reference your data catalog that Bill was talking about. All right, so when I click Run Flow, the publish is beginning. And at this point, I also want to mention Tableau Prep is definitely not the only way to publish to a Tableau Online site. There's the REST API, tab command, and of course, Tableau Desktop. Okay, so our data source is published. This is really great. I don't have to do anything with permissions because the project that I've included it in, thanks to Martin, handles all the permissions for me. I know that everyone who's supposed to have access to this does, and no one who's not supposed to have access to it does as well. Sure. Anyway. So, yeah, this is setting up self-service access for all the people who need it. But I want us to consider what's going to happen as we start to publish more and more data sources. So right now we have 1, but what happens when we have 100, or when we have hundreds of data sources? At that point, if someone's coming in and they want to answer this business question, something simple like how many requests have we had this last year? If we have a ton of different data sources that all kind of look similar, we're going to run into that. Which one is the source of truth? What's authoritative? In this situation, you need more than just correct permissions and access. What you really need is guidance. And our answer for guidance is something called data source certification. So I'm going to show you how that works. If we click on our data source name, and we go over to this Details tab, and down here on the right, there's Edit Certification Status. So we're going to click this data is certified, and we can also add a comment specifying what it's specifically certified for, use cases, things like that, additional details. So when we click Save, the data source is certified, and if we go back to the Data Sources tab, you see it now has this icon. This icon is an indication that this is something trustworthy, that you can rely on it, and it's the source of truth for the answer to that question. All right. One more thing I want to point out. You can also do your searches and specify that you're only looking for certified data sources. So next thing, I want to turn a corner and talk about a different type of users. So when Bill was speaking earlier, there were some people who needed access to data sources, but there were also these people who are only going to be consuming pre-built content, our decision makers or our viewers, or data consumers, they might be called. For them, they're going to be looking at workbooks, and right now we have nothing for them to see. So they don't have anything to self-serve. Of course, as you go through the process of uploading your data, your content creators start uploading their visualizations, publishing things. Naturally, more and more stuff is going to become available. But to help speed up this process, Tableau has built this thing called dashboard starters. It was mentioned a little bit in Devs on Stage that we support it for LinkedIn, but we also have a bunch of already supported data source types like Salesforce and ServiceNow. And I'm going to show you how they work. So you create a new workbook, and here we are in web authoring, and you go over to this dashboard starters tab. You can filter by ones that are relevant to you, and so we're going to select ServiceNow, and you can browse for one that you find particularly helpful. At this point, you can use dashboard, and you're selecting a project. Normally, when you're in the iteration phase, trying to figure out what's right, you would send it to dev, but at this point, Tableau's done the work for you, so let's send it straight to a review process, which happens in QA. So let create workbook. And at this point, you'd sign in. We would switch out the sample data with your organization's data. But we're just going to sign in and use the sample data because, well, the three of us don't have our own ServiceNow account, and I'm not going to show you Tableau's internal ServiceNow stuff. All right, so it's been published to our site. Again, the permissions, because we published it to QA, we know that they work. We don't have to test it on a per piece of content basis. One of the nice things about Dashboard Starter, though, is that when you use it, it's now yours to edit, to change, to adapt to your needs. And you probably should try changing it, because another piece of value that you can get from this is, as an example, so in Tableau Public, you can learn from existing content and get new ideas, you can improve your skills. Within your organization, this can be an initial piece of good content that people who are going to be analyzing ServiceNow or these other data sources, they can learn from. They can learn dashboarding best practices. So let's say at this point, we skip forward a few days, and our project leader has come and reviewed it. They think this is great. We need to get this in the hands of our decision makers so they can start making good decisions based on it. So all we have to do is publish it to our production project. So we'll just go up to Save As, we'll select IT Prod, and Incident Report for IT Managers. Save. All right. So at this point, we've successfully saved it. I can close out of this tab. I can head over to the IT Prod project, and there it is. So again, Martin is saving us time. We don't have to mess with permissions. You got a question in the back?
Yeah, is there any reason why you wouldn't use one of those dashboard starters for a different type of data source? Would that just be a disaster, like a bunch of rework, or
Yeah, so one of the requirements is that like you can't build a dashboard for a different schema, right? Because then it just wouldn't match. So as far as using it for other data source types, you could learn from it and copy some of the techniques, but you would need to figure out which rows or which columns are matching up with which columns and get the schemas to match up. So that would be, it would be really difficult to replicate it. But yeah, great, thanks. Thanks for the question. All right, so we've now published this. This is available for our content creators our data consumers, our viewers, our decision makers to look at. And at this point, they can set up, they can schedule subscriptions so they can get it in their email. They can get alerts, data-driven alerts for when data crosses a certain threshold. They can mark it as a favorite and then come back and view it whenever they need it. But I want to ask, is this the end of the story? The answer is no, and the reason is because this is based on an extract. So in order for those subscriptions to change from day to day, the data, if you were to have a subscription and it comes in every day and the data is the same every day, obviously something is broken. The nice thing about an extract is that it's, you're not hitting your database every time, so you're potentially saving on resource utilization charges. And it's faster because we've pulled the data out and we're storing it in Hyper, which is built for Tableau. And it's local in Tableau Online, so we don't have this round trip to your database. But it doesn't stay fresh on its own. But keeping it fresh is actually simple to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So you just go into View. We're going to click on this Refresh Schedules tab and create a new extract refresh. So at this point, you'd search for one that works for your needs. In this case, we'll do daily at 11 p.m., so it's refreshed overnight. You'll hit Schedule Refresh, and there you go. Now you set up this data to be refreshed on a regular basis. And this completes our story for onboarding at this point. Now, when your viewers come and they are setting up their subscriptions, it's going to behave as expected. Right? They're going to get new data every time. So let's change back to our PowerPoint and do a quick recap. Oh, it's back. All right. So I showed you publishing a data source. I showed you certifying a data source, using dashboard starters as a way of quickly getting content up on your site, and finally, showed you scheduling an extract refresh so your data is staying up to date. Now I'm going to turn it over to Martin, and he's going to talk a little bit about maintenance.
Thank you, Corey. So now our site is set up, and we have started to add some data and content. It is truly ready to be used by everyone in the organization. And over time, more and more people will connect to it and start creating workbooks and data sources. In this section, I would like to focus on the monitoring tools that Tableau Online provides to track the usage of your site. And these tools are really essential to make sure that the content on your site stays relevant and that you make optimal use of your resources. So more specifically, I'd like to demo you a new feature called Admin Insights that is currently in pre-release and that is only available on Tableau Online. So let's switch back to our demo site. Before I talk about Admin Insights, let me quickly point out the already existing status views over here. So they give you insights about traffic to views and data sources up here, actions performed by your users, and some background-specific tasks. While these views are helpful, they only reach back 30 days, and you cannot really create any customizations on top of that. So that's why I would like to show you the new Admin Insights feature. To do so, let me switch over to a site where the feature has been activated. I think here I need to. True. Okay, so here we are on this other site, and as you can see, compared to the previous site, a new project, Admin Insights, was automatically created when the feature got activated. So let's have a look. So in this project, you can find a workbook called Admin Starters that was automatically created by Tableau and that contains some visualizations to answer some general use cases. It contains as well 2 data sources, events and users, that allow you to create your own visualizations on top of them. But let's have a closer look at the Admin Starter workbook. As you can see, it comes with a couple of quizzes that allow you to answer important questions about your site. For example, what are the popular data sources and workbooks? Or when has a workbook last been used? Maybe it can be deleted. Other questions may be, how many subscription licenses am I using? Or can I reassign some licenses from users to better match their use of Tableau? For this demo, let's use the workbook to answer one specific question. And for that, let's imagine that we are a few weeks or months after launching our site, and we now would like to know how we compare to our initial success criteria. More specifically, we would like to know how many weekly logins are we having. And we can find that information here in the login activity drill down. So let me open it. While the view is loading, let me quickly point out that this feature is being demoed at the labs over in the Data Village. So if you want to have a closer look and play with it yourself, just go and check it out. So our viz has loaded, and let me orient you real quick. Here we have the login trends over the past couple of weeks. Below that, we have a breakdown of hourly logins, and on the right, we have some heat maps that show login trends over the time of the day and day of the week. So actually, the information we were interested in can be found just here on top. And we see a nice little peak when the site initially was rolled out, and then a little decrease when the first hype tapered off. But since then, we have a nice little slope in increase in in the login trends of users that connect to our site. Now, let's say that I'm happy with this evolution of the login trends, but I'd like to ask one follow-up question. Are there any users that I can re-engage with? And the viz down here looks interesting to answer that question. It shows us when a user has last logged in. And as you can see, most users have logged in rather recently, like a day or a few days ago. But there are a couple of users, like over here, that have logged in a few weeks ago and didn't come back. My assumption is that they may have logged in when the site initially got rolled out, but back then, there may have not been enough content and data sources on the site that attracted their attention. So they just didn't come back. Maybe now it's time to reach out to them again and show them some of the amazing new data and content that has been added. So let me just select those marks. And look at the underlying data. In this data, I can find the email addresses that I can use to reach out to these users. So what I have done is I have used this workbook to answer like 2 specific questions. But as mentioned earlier, you can use it to answer plenty of other important questions about your Tableau Online site. And of course, you can customize it or create new visualizations on top of the data sources. As mentioned as well, this feature is currently in pre-release. So if you want to know more about it, either go see Eden, who's the product manager at the TC Lab stands, or just come reach out to us and we'll put you in contact. Now, let me hand it back to Corey for a final recap.
All right, thanks again, Martin. So we laid out 4 high-level steps for building your home on Tableau Online. We're going to run through them again and quickly summarize how you can do this yourself. So the first step was planning. In order to capture the value of Tableau Online, you should set up a governing body that sets specific measurable goals for your site. And then you should provide places for learning and support as your users are onboarded. Next, you need to create the structure. So in this case, we mean the project structure, and then the functional groups that match up to those projects. And then you're going to set permissions on the groups for those projects. Next, you start adding data and content. At this point, you should be publishing and certifying important data sources for your organization. Then start creating the workbooks, the dashboards that are going to be important for your business. and then start to integrate those with your decisions and decision makers and decision-making processes. Finally, maintenance. Keep up with the housework. Use the data that Tableau provides to monitor and evaluate your progress towards your goals. And as you see that you have gaps, you can use that as an opportunity to train and empower your users. Finally, enjoy your new home. So my cheesy tagline is, because it's a home powered by the power of data, you might even call it a smart home. All right. So before we go, these are some related sessions. These were really applicable last time. They're actually over. All right. Well, and this is now, and this is still relevant. Please complete the session survey from my evaluations. It'll help us get better for next year. And